The church doors opened before the bride reached the altar. Sunlight poured through the entrance of St. Aurelia Chapel, cutting across the marble floor and turning every face in the room toward the sudden disturbance. The musicians stopped. The groom went pale. Ava Reed felt more than 100 strangers staring at the wheelchair, waiting outside on the stone steps behind her. She also felt the strength of the man carrying her. Nico Salvatore walked into the chapel with Ava held against his chest, as though the entire building belonged to him. His black suit fit his powerful frame with terrifying precision. A thin scar crossed his left eyebrow. His dark eyes remained fixed on the man standing beside the altar. 6 men in black entered behind him. None of them smiled. None of them needed to display the weapons hidden beneath their jackets. The guests recognized danger before they recognized Nico. Whispers moved through the chapel. Ethan Mercer stood beneath an arch of white roses with his second bride beside him. His confident expression disappeared the moment he saw Ava in Nico's arms. 1 year earlier, Ethan had left Ava inside a hospital room and told her he could not sacrifice his future for a woman who might never walk again. Now he stared at her as though she had risen from the dead. Ava wore a deep blue dress that rested softly over her curves. Her brown hair fell over one shoulder. She had chosen the dress because it made her feel strong, not because she had expected anyone to carry her into the ceremony. Especially not him. Nico's hand rested beneath her knees. His other arm supported her back. His hold was careful, but there was nothing gentle about the rage in his face. Ethan found his voice. Put her down. Nico continued walking. The bride turned toward Ethan. You said she would come alone. Nico heard her. His eyes did not leave Ethan. That was your first mistake today. He stopped in the center aisle. Ava could hear her own heartbeat beneath the silence. Ethan looked around at the guests, searching for someone willing to defend him. Nobody moved. Nico finally lowered his gaze to Ava. Are you ready? She had asked herself that question throughout the night. Was she ready to face the man who had abandoned her? Was she ready to hear people whisper about the woman in the wheelchair? Was she ready to watch Ethan promise another woman the devotion he had once promised her? She had believed she was ready when she left her apartment. She had stopped believing it when she saw the chapel steps. Then Nico had removed his coat, placed it over her shoulders, lifted her from the wheelchair, and told her she would not enter that building beneath anyone's pity. Now she looked at Ethan. I am ready. Nico turned toward the wedding guests. The groom invited his former wife here because he wanted all of you to see what he did to her. Ethan stepped away from the altar. You have no idea what happened between us. Nico's expression remained calm. I know exactly what happened. He carried Ava closer to the altar. You did not divorce her because she became disabled. Ethan's face tightened. Nico stopped several feet away from him. You divorced her because she survived the crash you caused. 1 year earlier, rain hammered the windshield as Ethan drove across the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. Ava sat beside him with one hand resting over a stack of student drawings on her lap. She had spent the evening at a school fundraiser and had asked Ethan to come inside several times. He had remained in the car. He said he had work to finish. He always had work to finish. Ava had learned to accept the glow of his phone against his face during dinners. She had learned not to ask why he took calls outside. She had learned to ignore the distance growing between them because she believed marriage meant waiting through difficult seasons. That night, something felt different. Ethan kept checking the rearview mirror. His hands were tight around the steering wheel. Ava studied him. Are you all right? I am fine. You have barely spoken to me. I said I am fine. Ava. She turned toward the rain-streaked window. The answer hurt, but the anger beneath it worried her more. A black luxury car moved several lanes ahead of them. Its red lights appeared and disappeared through the rain. Ethan increased his speed. Ava looked at the speedometer. Slow down. He ignored her. Ethan. The black car changed lanes. Ethan followed. The bridge lights passed faster. Ava placed one hand against the dashboard. "What are you doing?" Ethan glanced at her. For one instant, she saw a man she did not recognize. There was fear in his eyes. There was also determination. He drove directly toward the black car. Ava shouted his name. Ethan turned the wheel. Their vehicle slammed into the rear side of the black car. Metal screamed. The world spun. Glass shattered around Ava like ice. Their vehicle struck the barrier and flipped onto its side. The black car crashed into the opposite wall before sliding across the wet pavement. Ava remembered the crushing pressure against her legs. She remembered tasting blood. She remembered Ethan calling someone from outside the vehicle. He had escaped through the broken driver's window. Ava tried to move. Pain tore through her lower body. Ethan appeared beside the windshield. Rain covered his face. "Help me." Her voice was barely louder than the storm. Ethan stared at her. Then he looked toward the black car. Its driver was trapped inside. Ava watched her husband walk away from her. At first, she thought he was going to help the other driver. Then she saw the object in his hand. A gun. Ethan crossed the wet bridge toward the damaged black car. The driver forced his door open and fell onto the pavement. He was tall and dressed in black. Blood covered one side of his face. He tried to stand, but his injured leg collapsed beneath him. Ethan lifted the gun. Ava did not think about the metal pinning her legs. She did not think about the darkness closing around her. She reached through the shattered windshield and grabbed the broken emergency hammer that had fallen from the console. She threw it. The hammer struck the pavement near Ethan's feet. He turned. The distraction lasted only a moment, but it gave the stranger time to lunge forward. The gun fired into the night. The bullet struck the bridge railing. The stranger drove his shoulder into Ethan and knocked the weapon from his hand. A second vehicle appeared through the rain. Ethan saw the headlights and ran. He climbed over the center divider and disappeared down an emergency stairway. The stranger could have followed him. Instead, he turned toward Ava. Even through the rain and blood, she saw the cold authority in his face. He came to the ruined vehicle and looked through the windshield. "Can you move? My legs are trapped." The smell of gasoline reached them. The stranger looked beneath the vehicle. His expression changed. Fire flickered near the rear tire. He forced his hands through the windshield opening and began pulling away broken glass. Ava shook her head. "You are hurt. So are you." The fire grew. The stranger tried to bend the damaged metal around Ava. Pain tightened his face. But he continued. The vehicle shifted. Ava screamed. The stranger stopped immediately. "Look at me." She met his eyes. They were almost black. "You are not dying here." His voice was calm enough to make her believe him. The flames spread beneath the vehicle. Ava reached for his jacket. "The other car." "What? Your car is burning too." He looked behind him. The black car had begun smoking. A man was unconscious in the passenger seat. The stranger hesitated. Ava saw the conflict in his face. "Go. I am not leaving you. Get him out first. I will stay awake." The stranger studied her as if nobody had ever given him an order before. Then he ran to his vehicle. He dragged the unconscious passenger through the damaged door and carried him toward the center of the bridge. Ava fought to remain conscious. She heard more vehicles approaching. Not police vehicles. 3 black vehicles stopped around the crash. Men rushed out. The stranger pointed toward Ava. "Get her out." The men moved instantly. They lifted the crushed frame with tools from their vehicles. Another man crawled through the windshield and supported Ava while they cut the metal around her legs. The pain became unbearable. Before darkness took her, she saw the stranger kneeling beside her. Rain ran down his face. His hand closed around hers. "What is your name, Ava?" "Ava. What Ava Reed?" He repeated it as if he intended never to forget. "My name is Nico." Then the bridge disappeared. The abandoned wife, Ava, woke 3 days later in a private hospital room. Her mother sat beside the bed. Ethan was not there. The doctors explained the damage slowly. Her spinal cord had been injured. Several surgeries had stabilized her condition. But the chances of her walking independently again were uncertain. Ava listened without crying. She asked when she could return to her students. The doctor looked at her mother before answering. Recovery would take time. Ava asked about the man from the bridge. Nobody knew who she meant. The police report listed a single vehicle accident caused by heavy rain. There was no mention of the black car. There was no mention of the gun. There was no mention of Ethan leaving her trapped inside the vehicle. When Ethan finally entered her room, he carried flowers from the hospital gift shop. He set them on the table without kissing her. Ava watched him. Where have you been? Speaking with lawyers. Why? There may be questions about the accident. You caused it. His gaze moved toward the door. You were confused. I saw you follow that car. You were in shock. I saw the gun. Ethan closed the door. His voice became quieter. You need to think very carefully before you start making accusations. The doctors said you suffered a serious head injury. I know what I saw. No. Ava. You know what you think you saw? He came closer to the bed. The tenderness she once trusted was gone. That was when she understood something had ended long before the crash. She just had not known it. Where is Nico? Ethan's face changed. It was only a slight movement around his eyes. But she noticed. Who? The man you tried to shoot. I have never heard that name. Ava reached for the call button. Ethan caught her wrist. Not hard enough to leave a mark. Hard enough to frighten her. You need to rest. Release me. He stared at her. She did not look away. Ethan released her wrist and left. 2 weeks later, he returned with divorce papers. Ava sat in a wheelchair beside the hospital window. She was learning how to move from the bed without assistance. Every motion required concentration. Every failure left her exhausted. Ethan placed the papers on the table. She looked at them. What is this? He did not sit. I cannot do this. Do what? Spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who may never walk again. The words entered the room softly. That made them crueler. Ava stared at the man she had loved for 7 years. I never asked you to give up your life. You would not have to ask. Everyone would expect it. She could hear nurses moving beyond the door. Ethan lowered his voice. I am 34 years old. I want children. I want to travel. I want a normal life. Ava looked down at her unresponsive legs. Then she looked at him again. You are not leaving because of the wheelchair. He said nothing. You are leaving because you are afraid I remember what you did. Ethan's face hardened. Sign the papers. She signed them the following morning. Not because she accepted his explanation. She signed because she refused to spend another day married to a man who saw her survival as a burden. Within a month, Ethan sold their home. He told mutual friends that the accident had changed Ava. He said she had become angry, suspicious, and emotionally unstable. Several people believed him. Others simply disappeared because they did not know how to speak to a woman whose life had changed so visibly. Ava moved into a small, accessible apartment near the school where she had taught. The school could not hold her position indefinitely, but the principal arranged remote lessons while she recovered. Ava taught children from her kitchen table. She smiled through reading lessons. She encouraged nervous students. She ended each call before the pain in her back became visible. At night, she practiced transferring from her wheelchair to the bed until her arms shook. She refused to let the accident become the only thing people saw when they looked at her. 3 months after the crash, Nico Salvatore visited her. Ava was leaving a physical therapy appointment when a black vehicle stopped near the entrance. 2 men stepped out. Then Nico emerged. He walked with a slight stiffness in his right leg. The injury had not weakened his presence. People moved away from him without understanding why. Ava recognized him immediately. The scar near his eyebrow was new. He approached her wheelchair. "You remember me?" She looked at the men behind him. "I remember the bridge." Nico dismissed them with a glance. They stepped away. He looked at Ava for several silent seconds. "I was told you might never walk again." The statement hurt more than she expected. "I have doctors to tell me that." His jaw tightened. "I did not mean it as pity." "How did you mean it?" "As a fact, I intend to correct." Ava gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "You cannot order my spinal cord to heal." Nico crouched in front of her. The movement brought his eyes level with hers. The feared men behind him looked surprised. "I can find specialists. I have specialists. I can arrange anything you need. I do not need a powerful stranger arranging my life." His expression did not change. "You saved mine. I distracted a man with a hammer. You remained inside a burning vehicle so I could save someone else." Ava looked away. "Anyone would have done it." "No." The certainty in his voice made her look back. "Most people would have protected themselves." "I am not most people." "I know." Something passed between them. It was not affection. It was recognition. Nico reached into his coat and placed a black card on her lap. There was only a telephone number on it. No name. "If you remember anything else about the bridge, call me." Ava touched the card. "Who are you?" His eyes became colder. "Someone your former husband should have killed when he had the chance." He stood and walked away. Ava did not call him. For the next 9 months, she kept the card inside the drawer beside her bed. The invitation. The wedding invitation arrived exactly 1 year after the crash. Ava found the cream envelope beneath her apartment door. Her name had been written by hand. Inside was a photograph of Ethan and a beautiful blonde woman standing beneath an arch of white flowers. Celeste Valle. Ava recognized the name. Celeste was the daughter of Victor Vale, a wealthy real estate developer who owned half the luxury hotels along the Philadelphia waterfront. The wedding would take place at St. Aurelia Chapel, followed by a reception at the Vale estate. A handwritten note rested beneath the invitation. Ava read it twice. "Ethan thought you deserved to see that life continues." There was no signature. Ava sat in the hallway with the invitation on her lap. For several minutes, she could not breathe. She imagined Ethan standing in a perfect church, promising to protect another woman. She imagined the guests looking at Ava and silently measuring everything she had lost. She imagined Ethan smiling because she had come. Then she looked at the wheelchair beneath her. Ethan had spent 1 year telling people that her life had ended. Ava decided she would attend and prove him wrong. She bought a blue dress. She arranged accessible transportation. She styled her own hair because she did not want anyone hovering around her with sympathetic eyes. On the morning of the wedding, she found a small box outside her apartment. Inside was a silver bracelet she had left in the wreckage. Her hands began trembling. The bracelet had been an anniversary gift from her mother. One side was blackened by fire. A note lay beneath it. "You should have died with him." Ava locked the door. She moved to the bedroom, opened the bedside drawer, and removed Nico's black card. Her hand paused above the telephone. She had survived 1 year without asking him for anything. Calling him felt like opening a door she might never close again. Someone struck the apartment door. Ava froze. The second knock was slower. 3 controlled impacts. She moved quietly into the living room and looked through the security viewer. Nico stood outside. He wore a black suit beneath a long, dark coat. 2 men waited several feet behind him. Ava opened the door but kept the chain attached. "How did you know?" His gaze moved over her face. "You were going to call me?" "I had not decided." "You picked up the card." Ava stared at him. "Are you watching me?" His expression hardened. No cameras. No microphones. 1 man outside the building since the invitation arrived. "You had someone following me, protecting you, without asking me." Because the person who caused your crash has decided you are dangerous again. She removed the chain and opened the door. Nico entered. His presence immediately made the apartment feel smaller. He noticed the wedding invitation on the table. Then he saw the burned bracelet. A dangerous stillness entered his face. Who delivered this? I do not know. His eyes moved to her dress. You were still planning to attend. Yes. Why? Because he invited me to feel ashamed. Nico looked at her wheelchair. Are you ashamed? No. The answer came immediately. Something almost like approval touched his face. Then I will take you. Ava shook her head. I did not call you for an escort. You did not call me at all. That does not mean you can decide what happens next. Nico moved closer. The air changed between them. He had the kind of power that made people obey before they understood the command. Ava had spent a year learning how to control her own body again. She would not surrender control of her choices. You can tell me what you know, she said. Then I will decide whether I attend. Nico removed his gloves. Your former husband was paid to kill me. Ava's fingers tightened around the wheels of her chair. On the bridge. Yes. Why? He was moving money for Victor Vale. I discovered it. Ethan was told to make my death look like an accident. Ava remembered the rain, the speed, the fear in Ethan's eyes. Nico continued. He brought you with him because a man driving home with his wife looked innocent. Ava felt suddenly cold. He used me as a cover. Yes. Why did he invite me to the wedding? Nico glanced at the burned bracelet. Because he knows I found the vehicle recording from the bridge. Do you have proof? Part of it. Part? The recording was damaged. My people recovered the impact, the route, and the sound of Ethan receiving instructions before the crash. We have not recovered the entire conversation. Then why is he not in prison? Because Victor Vale owns police officers, judges, and enough politicians to make evidence disappear. Ava looked toward the window. The city moved beyond the glass as though her world had not shifted again. Nico lowered his voice. The invitation is bait. For you or for you, both. Then going would be foolish. Yes. She turned toward him. I am still going. One of Nico's men shifted near the doorway. Nico did not move. Why? Because Ethan expects me to hide. Ava touched the bracelet. He expects me to remain afraid and silent while he builds another life from what he did to mine. Nico looked at her for a long moment. Then you will not enter that church alone. The arrival St. Aurelia Chapel stood on a hill beyond the city. The morning was bright and cold. White flowers covered the entrance. Luxury vehicles lined the circular drive. Ava's accessible transport stopped near the rear entrance. A security guard approached and informed the driver that the service ramp had been removed for renovation. Ava looked toward the wide stone staircase leading to the chapel. There were 20 steps. Guests were already watching from the entrance. Some recognized her. Ava saw phones lifted discreetly. Humiliation moved through her body like heat. The invitation had listed the venue as accessible. Ethan had known exactly what he was doing. Nico stepped from the black vehicle behind her. His men spread across the drive. The security guard looked at Nico and immediately stepped back. Ava opened her transport door. I can use the portable ramp. The driver examined the distance. The angle is too steep. Nico looked toward the stairs. Then he removed his coat. He placed it around Ava's shoulders. She looked up at him. What are you doing? Taking you inside. My chair cannot go up those steps. I know. His arm moved behind her back. Ava placed one hand against his chest. Nico. His body became still beneath her palm. She could feel the controlled strength under his suit. People are watching. Let them. I do not want them to think I am helpless. His gaze held hers. They will not. How do you know? Because helpless women do not walk into traps. He lifted her. Ava instinctively placed one arm around his neck. The movement brought her face close to his. His breath touched her temple. His hold was firm but careful. He supported her without making her feel fragile. One of his men folded the wheelchair and carried it behind them. Nico began climbing the steps. Guests moved out of the way. Ava heard the whispers. Ethan's former wife? The woman from the accident. Nico Salvatore. The name moved differently through the crowd. People feared it. Ava looked at Nico. You never told me your last name. You never asked. Would you have answered no? Despite herself. Ava almost smiled. Nico noticed. For 1 second. The darkness in his face changed. Then the chapel doors opened. The second wedding. The bride's father recognized Nico before anyone else. Victor Vale rose from the front row. His face lost its color. Ethan remained beside the altar with Celeste. Ava saw satisfaction flicker across his face when he first noticed her. Then he saw who carried her. The satisfaction disappeared. Nico walked down the aisle. Ava felt every stare. But she refused to lower her eyes. Ethan spoke first. Put her down. Nico ignored him. He asked Ava if she was ready. When she said yes, he turned toward the guests and revealed the truth. Ethan took a step forward. This is insane. Ava suffered a brain injury. She has spent a year inventing stories because she cannot accept that our marriage ended. Ava felt the old pain strike her. Nico felt her body tense. His arms tightened around her. He addressed Ethan calmly. You invited her because you believed nobody would trust a disabled woman over a respected financial advisor. Ethan looked toward Victor. Call security. Victor did not move. Nico's men already controlled every exit. Celeste stared at Ethan. What is he talking about? Nothing. Nico nodded toward one of his men. A large screen behind the musicians came to life. It had been prepared to display photographs of the bride and groom. Instead, grainy footage appeared. A black car crossed a bridge beneath heavy rain. A second vehicle accelerated behind it. The angle came from a traffic camera. The guests watched Ethan's vehicle change lanes and strike Nico's car. Ava heard shocked breaths around the chapel. Ethan turned toward the screen. That proves nothing. Nico looked at him. Then explained the payment. A bank document appeared. A transfer from a Vale-controlled company had entered Ethan's private account 2 days before the crash. Celeste faced her father. Did you know about this? Victor's silence answered her. Ethan tried to regain control. A business payment does not prove murder. Ava looked at him. Why did you have a gun? The chapel became silent again. Ethan stared at her. Ava continued. Why did you leave me trapped inside the vehicle while you walked toward Nico with a gun? You were unconscious. I watched you. You were confused. I threw the emergency hammer at you. Ethan's jaw tightened. Ava saw the truth in his face. So did Celeste. She stepped away from him. Nico carried Ava to the front row and lowered her into her wheelchair. He adjusted the blue fabric of her dress so it did not catch beneath the wheel. The simple care in the movement affected Ava more deeply than the dramatic entrance. Nico rose. His body blocked Ethan's view of her. Ethan pointed toward him. You think she matters to you because she saved your life. She is not your responsibility. Nico's voice became colder. She stopped being my responsibility months ago. His hand rested on the back of Ava's wheelchair. She became my choice. Ava looked up at him. Nico did not meet her eyes. The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised her. Victor Vale signaled toward a man near the side door. The man reached beneath his jacket. Nico moved before Ava understood the danger. He pushed her wheelchair behind the stone altar and covered her body with his. A gunshot shattered the stained glass window. Guests screamed. Nico's men drew their weapons. The chapel erupted into chaos. Another shot struck the altar. Stone fragments scattered across Ava's dress. Nico pressed one hand behind her head. Stay down. What about the guests? My men are moving them. Ava heard bodies rushing through the aisles. Nico lifted his head slightly. A third shot came from the balcony. He drew a gun from beneath his jacket and fired once. A man fell behind the railing. Nico turned back to Ava. She stared at the weapon in his hand. For the first time, she saw clearly what he was. Not simply a wealthy man with bodyguards. Not only the stranger from the bridge, he was someone who could take a life without hesitation. Ava should have been terrified of him. Instead, she remembered him reaching into a burning vehicle while his own blood covered his face. Nico lifted her from the wheelchair. We are leaving. My chair. It will follow us. He carried her through the side door as his men surrounded them. Outside, black vehicles blocked the road. Gunfire sounded near the front gate. Nico shielded Ava's head beneath his coat while running toward the nearest vehicle. A bullet struck the door as they reached it. Nico turned his body, taking the impact of shattered glass across his shoulder. Ava felt him flinch. You are hurt. It is nothing. Blood darkened his white shirt near the collar. He placed her inside the vehicle and climbed in beside her. The car accelerated before the door completely closed. Ava looked through the rear window. Her former husband stood at the chapel entrance. Ethan watched the vehicles disappear. There was no guilt in his face, only hatred. The house without mirrors, Nico took Ava to a hidden estate outside Philadelphia. The house stood behind iron gates and winter trees. Its stone walls faced a wide river. Security lights swept across the grounds even during the afternoon. The interior was luxurious but cold. Dark wood, gray stone, tall windows. There were no family photographs and almost no mirrors. Ava noticed the absence immediately. Nico's physician removed several glass fragments from his shoulder in a private medical room. Ava waited outside until she heard Nico dismiss everyone. Then she entered. He sat on the edge of an examination table with his shirt removed. Scars crossed his chest and back. Some were thin and pale. Others were deep enough to suggest injuries that should have killed him. Ava stopped near the doorway. Nico looked at her. You should be resting. So should you. The doctor finished. He talks too much. Ava moved her wheelchair closer. Blood still marked the skin near his shoulder. You need a bandage. I can manage. She reached for the medical tray. Nico watched her prepare the gauze. I thought you were a teacher. Teachers learn how to clean injuries. From children, from playgrounds, art supplies, and adults who do not follow instructions. She pressed the gauze against his shoulder. Nico's muscles tightened beneath her fingers. Ava noticed the restraint in his body. He was not accustomed to being touched. The realization made the moment feel more intimate than it should have. You said I became your choice. His eyes moved to hers. I said what Ethan needed to hear. The answer hurt unexpectedly. Ava secured the bandage. Of course. She began moving away. Nico caught the arm of her wheelchair. The motion stopped her. I also said what I did not intend to admit. Ava looked at his hand on the chair. Then what did you mean? He released her. That I will not allow him to hurt you again. That sounds like responsibility. Nico stood. He was close enough that Ava had to lift her chin to meet his gaze. You want words I do not have. I want the truth. The truth is dangerous. So are you. Something dark and almost hungry entered his eyes. Ava felt her pulse quicken. Nico leaned down. His hand moved toward her face, but stopped before touching her cheek. The space between them narrowed. Then one of his men entered. Nico turned instantly. The moment vanished. The man reported that Ethan and Victor Vale had escaped the chapel before the police arrived. Celeste had been taken to a private location by her father's security team. Nico pulled on a clean black shirt. Ava watched the cold mask return to his face. How long do I have to stay here until Ethan is found? That could take months. Then you will stay for months. No. Nico looked at her. Ava held his gaze. I have students. I have a home. I have a life. You also have a man trying to kill you. I spent a year rebuilding everything Ethan took from me. I will not allow you to take control because you believe you are protecting me. Nico stepped closer. Protection requires control, not over me. Over everything that can reach you. Ava shook her head. You cannot lock me inside a beautiful house and call it safety. His jaw tightened. You are alive. That is not the same as living. The words struck something inside him. He looked away first. You can teach from here. That is not the point. Then tell me the point. Ava moved closer to him. I decide what happens to my body. I decide where I go. I decide who helps me. The accident took enough choices away from me. Nico stared down at her. For a moment, Ava thought he would refuse. Then he spoke. You will return to your apartment when my security team finishes searching it. That is not permission I need from you. No. His voice softened. It is a compromise I am asking from you. Ava studied him. He was trying. For a man like Nico, asking rather than commanding seemed almost painful. 2 days, she said. 3. 2. His mouth moved slightly. 2. The door he could not close. Ava stayed at the estate for 2 nights. Nico had an accessible bedroom prepared before they arrived. The bathroom had support rails. The furniture had been moved to create wider paths. A ramp led from the terrace to the garden. The changes were too complete to have been arranged in a single afternoon. On the second night, Ava confronted him in the library. You prepared this room before the wedding. Nico stood near the fireplace reading a report. He did not deny it. You expected me to stay here. I expected Ethan to make a move. How long have you known about the invitation? 3 weeks. Ava's anger rose. You knew before I did. One of Ethan's employees copied the guest list. You could have warned me. You would have attended anyway. That was my decision. I knew what you would decide. You do not know me that well. Nico set down the report. You refuse help when you believe it contains pity. You become quiet when you are angry because you do not trust yourself to speak without causing pain. You touch the left wheel of your chair twice whenever you are nervous. You pretend your back does not hurt until your hands begin shaking. You continue teaching children who have no idea you sometimes cry after ending the lesson. Ava stared at him. How do you know all of that? His silence frightened her more than an answer. You said you were not watching me. I was not inside your home. That is not an answer. Nico walked toward the window. After the bridge, Ethan remained free. I placed protection near you. For an entire year. Yes. Why? At first. Because you were a witness. Ava waited. And later Nico looked toward the river. Later. Because I could not stop. The honesty moved through the room like a blade. Ava's anger weakened. But her fear remained. That is not normal. Nothing about me is normal. Did you know every place I went? Yes. Every therapy appointment? Yes. Every day I returned to school? Yes. You had no right. I know. Ava had expected him to defend himself. His acceptance unsettled her. Then why do it, Nico? Turned toward her. Because the first night I slept after the crash, I saw you inside that vehicle. His voice remained controlled. But something had broken beneath it. Every time I closed my eyes, the fire reached you before my men did. I would wake convinced you had died. He moved closer. I sent people to confirm you were alive. Then I needed confirmation the next day. And the next? Ava could not look away. Nico stopped before her. I told myself it was because you had seen Ethan. Then because Victor Vale might target you. Then because I owed you my life. His hand closed around the handle of her wheelchair. All of those reasons became lies. Ava's voice was barely audible. What was the truth? His eyes moved over her face. I needed you to be alive. The fire crackled behind him. Ava felt both fear and tenderness. His attachment was not soft. It was not healthy or easy. It had grown in silence, sharpened by guilt and fed by distance. She reached for his wrist. Nico became completely still. You do not get to protect me by turning my life into another prison. I know. Then no more men following me without my knowledge. His expression darkened. Ava. No more. He looked down at her hand around his wrist. One man at a distance. Someone I know about. Two. One. His gaze returned to hers. One. Ava released him. Nico did not move away. Their faces were close. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Ava felt the change in his breathing. He lifted one hand and touched a strand of hair near her cheek. The touch was so careful that it seemed impossible from a man who had fired a weapon inside a church hours earlier. Nico leaned closer. A telephone rang in his pocket. He closed his eyes briefly. Then he stepped away. Ava watched him answer. The moment between them remained unfinished. That made it more dangerous. The missing recording Nico's men found another device inside Ava's apartment. It had been placed behind a smoke detector in the hallway. The device did not transmit video. It recorded sound. Ethan had been listening for anything Ava remembered about the bridge. Ava stood beneath the smoke detector while Nico removed it. Her apartment no longer felt like hers. How long was it there? Nico examined the device. Several months. Ava felt sick. Ethan had listened to her lessons, her telephone calls, her private moments. Nico crushed the device in his hand. His expression remained calm. But Ava saw blood appear where the plastic cut his palm. She took it from him. Stop. He looked at her. You are hurting yourself. It is not enough. Enough for what? For what he did to you. Ava opened his hand. I will not become the reason you destroy yourself. Nico's gaze softened for one instant. You assume there is something left to destroy. The answer revealed more than he intended. Before Ava could respond, one of his men entered carrying a laptop. The damaged recording from Nico's vehicle had been partially restored. Ava and Nico listened together. Rain filled the speakers. A man's voice came through the damaged audio. Ethan's voice. I am behind him. Another voice answered. Do not let Salvatore leave the bridge. Ethan spoke again. My wife is in the car. Then make sure there are no witnesses. Ava stopped breathing. Nico closed the laptop. She stared at the dark screen. Ethan had known she might die. Worse. He had warned them. She was present and continued anyway. Nico knelt beside her wheelchair. Ava. She pushed his hand away. Do not. Her voice broke. Nico remained still. Ava turned toward the window. For 1 year, part of her had searched for an explanation that would make Ethan less monstrous. Perhaps he had panicked. Perhaps someone had threatened him. Perhaps he had not meant for the vehicles to crash. The recording destroyed every remaining excuse. He chose his own survival over hers before the crash began. Ava covered her mouth. Nico moved toward her again. This time, she did not push him away. He placed one arm behind her back and drew her against his chest. Ava held the front of his shirt. She did not cry quietly. The grief came from somewhere deeper than her marriage. She cried for the woman who had trusted Ethan. She cried for the students who visited her hospital room and tried not to stare at the wheelchair. She cried for every night she had blamed herself for not recovering fast enough. Nico held her without speaking. His hand rested against the back of her head. His body remained solid around her until the grief passed. When Ava finally lifted her face, she saw rage in his eyes. Promise me something. Nico waited. Do not kill him because of me. His expression became unreadable. I cannot promise that. Then promise you will not become him. Something changed in Nico's face. Ethan hurt me because he believed his goals mattered more than my life. Do not decide your revenge matters more than what I am asking. Nico looked away. Ava touched his jaw and brought his gaze back to hers. You said I became your choice. You are. Then choose the woman I am. Not the pain you want to avenge. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he covered her hand with his. I will bring him to justice if justice remains possible. And if it does not, his eyes became cold. Then I will make sure he never reaches you again. It was not the promise she requested. It was the closest a man like Nico could give. The teacher returns. Ava returned to school under protection. Nico wanted 6 men inside the building. Ava allowed one near the entrance and another across the street. The argument lasted almost an hour. She won only because she threatened to remain inside her apartment without anyone. Nico called the decision emotional blackmail. Ava called it compromise. The children welcomed her with handmade signs. She rolled into the classroom and found paper stars hanging from the ceiling. Her students crowded around her chair, telling stories at the same time. For the first time since the invitation arrived, Ava felt normal. Nico watched from the hallway. He had come to inspect the security arrangements. A little girl named Sophie noticed him. She walked toward the tall man in the black coat. Are you Miss Reed's boyfriend? The hallway became silent. Nico looked at Ava. Ava tried not to smile. He is a friend. Sophie studied Nico seriously. He looks angry. Nico crouched slightly. I am not angry with Miss Reed. Do you smile? Sometimes. Prove it. Ava covered her mouth. Nico looked at her again. She saw accusation in his eyes. Then he gave Sophie the smallest smile Ava had ever seen. The child nodded. That is better. She returned to the classroom. Nico Rosie. Your students are demanding. They learned from me. His eyes held hers. I believe that. The quiet warmth between them lasted until a young physical therapist entered the hallway. Daniel Price had worked with Ava since her second surgery. He was kind, patient, and openly interested in her. He carried a folder containing information about an experimental rehabilitation program. Daniel placed one hand on Ava's shoulder while showing her the documents. Nico watched the contact. His face became completely still. Ava noticed. Daniel noticed too. You must be the security consultant. Daniel said. Nico looked at the hand on Ava's shoulder. Remove it. Daniel blinked. Ava looked at Nico sharply. Nico. Daniel removed his hand. I was only showing her the program. You can show her without touching her. Daniel looked at Ava. Should I come back later? No. You should not? Ava turned her wheelchair toward Nico. Outside. Now. Nico followed her into an empty classroom. Ava closed the door. You cannot speak to people like that. He touched you. He is my therapist. He wants to be more than your therapist. That is none of your business. Nico's expression darkened. Everything that approaches you is my business. No. Ava moved closer. You do not own me. I know. Then stop behaving as if you do. His eyes moved to her mouth. Knowing and wanting are not the same thing. Ava felt heat rise beneath her skin. What do you want? The question escaped before she could stop it. Nico stood in silence. The classroom seemed suddenly too small. He placed one hand on the desk beside her. You should not ask me that when we are alone. Why? Because I have spent 1 year refusing to answer. Ava's pulse quickened. Answer now. He leaned closer. I want every man who looks at you to understand that you are beyond his reach. Ava swallowed. That is not your decision. No. His voice lowered. It is my weakness. The honesty disarmed her. Nico lifted his hand toward her face, but stopped again. Ava understood the pattern. He wanted to touch her. He always stopped because he feared taking something she had not offered. She closed the distance, herself. Her fingers touched the scar near his eyebrow. Nico's eyes closed briefly. Ava traced the edge of the scar. You received this on the bridge. Yes. Because of me. Because I turned back for you. You could have left. No. The answer came with absolute certainty. Ava's hand moved to his cheek. Nico opened his eyes. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. Then the school fire alarm began screaming. Nico reached for Ava immediately. This is not a drill. Smoke appeared beneath the classroom door. The assassination attempt. The fire began in the maintenance room. It was designed to empty the building. Nico lifted Ava from her wheelchair while his security team cleared the hallway. Children screamed in the classrooms. Ava pushed against his chest. My students. The teachers are evacuating them. Sophie is in the reading room. One of Nico's men checked the radio. The reading room is blocked. Ava looked at Nico. He understood before she spoke. No. She is alone. My men will reach her. Smoke thickened in the hallway. Ava pointed toward a service corridor. There is another entrance through the library. Nico carried her toward the exit. Put me down. No. I know the building better than your men. Ava. A child is trapped. The words stopped him. He turned toward the library. One of his men protested. The east corridor is unsecured. Nico handed Ava to the man. Take her outside. Ava gripped Nico's coat. I am coming with you. Absolutely not. She looked directly into his eyes. You do not know where the reading room is. Nico swore beneath his breath. He carried her through the library. Smoke rolled across the ceiling. Sprinklers released cold water over the shelves. Ava guided him toward a narrow doorway. They found Sophie beneath a table. Nico placed Ava on the floor beside the child. Ava pulled Sophie into her arms. Nico lifted them both, supporting Ava against one side of his body and Sophie against the other. A gunshot sounded from the corridor. The bullet struck the doorway. Nico turned, shielding them. A masked man appeared through the smoke. Nico placed Ava and Sophie behind a bookshelf. Stay down. He moved into the corridor. The two men collided. Ava heard fists striking bone. A second attacker entered through the library door. He raised a weapon toward Nico's back. Ava saw a metal book cart beside her. She locked both hands around the frame and pushed. The cart rolled across the wet floor and struck the attacker's knees. He fell. Nico turned and fired. The bullet struck the man's shoulder. Nico crossed the distance and removed the weapon. He returned to Ava. Are you hurt? No. Sophie cried against Ava's chest. Nico lifted them again. They reached the rear exit as flames spread across the library wall. Outside, teachers counted students in the parking lot. Ava's wheelchair had been brought from the classroom. Nico placed her into it and handed Sophie to another teacher. Then his body shifted. Ava saw blood spreading beneath his coat. You were shot. The bullet had entered near his ribs. Nico looked down as though the wound belonged to someone else. It passed through. You need a hospital. No hospitals. He almost fell. Ava caught his arm. For once, he allowed someone else to support him. The men around them stared as Nico lowered himself beside Ava's wheelchair. His forehead rested briefly against her shoulder. Ava placed her hand behind his neck. Stay with me. Nico looked up. The fear in his eyes was not for his own life. Are the children safe? Yes. And you, I am here. Only then did he allow his men to carry him to the vehicle. The fear beneath his power. Nico recovered at the river estate. The bullet had missed his lung. But blood loss left him weak. He hated weakness. He dismissed nurses. He argued with the physician. He attempted to leave bed less than one day after surgery. Ava rolled into his bedroom and found him standing beside the window with one hand against the wall. Get back into bed. Nico looked over his shoulder. You sound pleased to give orders. I am learning from an expert. I have work. Your men are handling it. They are not me. That is the point. His legs weakened. Ava moved closer. Do not make me watch you fall. Something in her voice reached him. Nico returned to the bed. Ava adjusted the pillows without asking. He watched her. You should not be here. You were shot while saving one of my students. I was shot because Ethan knew you returned to school. Then we share the blame. No. Nico caught her wrist. Never blame yourself for what men like Ethan choose to do. Ava looked at his hand around her wrist. He released her immediately. She remained beside him. The fire was another attempt to reach you. She said, yes. How did Ethan know where I would be? Nico hesitated. Ava recognized the silence. What are you hiding? Nico looked toward the door. One of my men gave Victor Vale information. A betrayal. Yes. Who? A man named Marco. He worked for my family for 12 years. Why would he betray you? Victor has his younger brother. Ava thought about the loyalty surrounding Nico. She had assumed fear kept his empire together. Now she saw the cost of every relationship in his world. Will you kill Marco? Nico's expression became cold. He endangered children. That is not an answer. You already know the answer. Ava moved away from the bed. Nico caught the wheel of her chair. Where are you going? Away from a man who believes death is the only language people understand. Sometimes it is. That does not mean you must speak it every time. Nico's hand tightened. Marco knew what would happen. His brother is being held, and he believed betraying you was the only way to save him. Nico looked at her. What would you have me do? Find the brother, remove Victor's power over him, and forgive the attack? No. Make Marco live with what he did. Nico studied her. You believe living is always more merciful than dying. Ava looked toward her legs. No. Her voice became quiet. I know that living can be the harder punishment. Nico released the wheelchair. He looked ashamed. Ava turned back toward him. I am not asking you to become harmless. That would be impossible. I am asking you not to become cruel simply because cruelty is easier. Nico lay against the pillows. Pain and exhaustion weakened the walls around him. Ava moved beside the bed again. He reached toward her hand. His fingers stopped before touching hers. Ava placed her hand inside his. Nico closed his eyes. I thought you were dead at the school. His voice was barely audible. Ava tightened her fingers. I am here. When the alarm sounded, I imagined the bridge again. I imagined reaching you too late. You did not. One day, I will. The fear beneath the words startled her. Nico Salvatore was feared by criminals, politicians, and men who carried weapons into churches. Yet the possibility of losing Ava terrified him. She leaned closer. You cannot protect me from every danger. I know. Then what can you do? His eyes opened. Destroy anything that tries. Ava almost smiled. That was not the answer I expected. It is the only honest one I have. She touched his face. Nico turned into her palm. His control finally broke. He pulled her closer and kissed her. The kiss was not gentle. It carried 1 year of denial, fear, and obsession. Ava held his shoulders as his hand moved behind her neck. His mouth softened only when he felt her respond. Then he stopped. His breathing was uneven. Pain tightened his face. Ava rested her forehead against his. You tore the stitches. Probably. She laughed quietly. It was the first laughter that room had ever heard. Nico looked at her as though the sound had entered a part of him nobody else could reach. Then kiss me again before the doctor arrives. This time, his kiss was slow. The bride's confession, Celeste Vale, contacted Ava 3 days later. The message came through the school principal. Celeste requested a meeting without Nico. Ava knew Nico would refuse. She told him anyway. Absolutely not. Ava sat across from his desk. She may know where Ethan is. Then she can speak to my men. She asked for me. That is why you are not going. Nico. No. Ava leaned forward. You do not get to end every discussion with one word. In this case, I do. She folded her arms. Then I will leave without telling you where. Nico stared at her. You would not. Try me. His eyes narrowed. Emotional blackmail again. Compromise. That is not compromise. Ava waited. Nico stood and walked around the desk. You will meet her in a location I control. Fine. You will wear a tracking device. No. Ava. One guard inside the room. 2. 1. Nico looked offended by her satisfaction. One guard, he said. The meeting took place inside a closed museum gallery. Celeste arrived wearing a dark coat and sunglasses. She looked different from the woman at the altar. There was no perfect makeup. No diamonds. Fear had replaced arrogance. She sat across from Ava. I did not know what Ethan did to you. Ava studied her. You knew he invited me. Celeste looked down. I knew he wanted you there. He said it would prove you were obsessed with him, and the removed ramp Celeste's face tightened. That was his idea. You allowed it. Yes. The admission carried shame. Ava did not comfort her. Why did you ask to meet Celeste? Removed a small telephone from her coat. It had a cracked screen and fire damage around the edges. I found this inside Ethan's private safe. Ava recognized it. Ethan had carried that telephone on the night of the crash. Celeste placed it on the table. He thought it no longer worked. My father's technician recovered several recordings. Why would Ethan record the conversation's insurance? He never trusted my father. Ava looked at the damaged telephone. Where is Ethan? Celeste's hands trembled. Preparing to leave the country. My father has arranged a private aircraft tomorrow night. Why tell me? Because Ethan plans to kill my father before he leaves. Ava stared at her. Celeste continued. He blames my father for the failed wedding and the attack at your school. He believes everyone has become a threat, including you, especially me. Ava touched the telephone. Why not go to the police? My father owns too many of them. Ethan owns the rest. The guard near the entrance touched his earpiece. His expression changed. He moved toward Ava. We need to leave. The gallery lights went out. Glass shattered. Celeste screamed. Ava heard footsteps moving through the darkness. The guard pushed Ava's wheelchair behind a marble statue and drew his weapon. A red light appeared against the wall. A laser sight. The guard fired toward the upper balcony. Ava reached for Celeste and pulled her down. More shots struck the statue. Nico's men entered through the rear door. Then Nico appeared. He was still recovering from the gunshot wound. His movements were slower, but his rage made him terrifying. He crossed the gallery beneath the exchange of gunfire. One attacker moved toward Ava from behind a display wall. Nico intercepted him. He struck the man's wrist and forced the weapon away. The attacker drove a knife toward Nico's wounded side. Ava shouted. Nico caught the man's arm and slammed him against the wall. The fight ended with a single, violent movement. Nico turned immediately toward Ava. He ignored Celeste. He ignored the blood on his own shirt. He knelt in front of Ava. Did he touch you? No. Are you hurt? No. Nico placed both hands against her face, as if he needed to verify the answer. Then he saw the damaged telephone. Celeste held it out. This contains everything? Nico took the device. He looked at Celeste. Where is Ethan? The abandoned church Ethan never intended to leave through the private airport. The flight information was another trap. While Nico's men prepared to intercept him, Ethan entered the river estate through an old service tunnel built during the Prohibition era. Marco had revealed the tunnel before his betrayal was discovered. Ava woke to the sound of glass breaking. Nico had left less than 1 hour earlier. One guard stood outside her bedroom. A shot sounded in the hallway. The door opened. Ethan entered. He wore a dark suit beneath a rain-covered coat. A gun rested in his hand. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Ava had imagined facing him again. She had imagined anger. Instead, she felt something close to grief. Ethan looked older. Fear had hollowed his face. He glanced at her wheelchair. You could have let it go. Ava reached slowly toward the alarm button beneath her bed. Ethan lifted the gun. Do not. She stopped. You invited me to the wedding. I wanted Nico to expose himself. You wanted to humiliate me. That was a benefit. The cruelty no longer surprised her. Where is Celeste? Somewhere my father cannot reach her. Ethan said, He is not your father. Ethan smiled without warmth. Victor gave me more than your family ever did. And you plan to kill him. His smile disappeared. Celeste talked. She gave us the telephone. Ethan's face changed. Ava understood she had confirmed something he had not known. He came closer. You always spoke before you understood the danger. You always mistook my kindness for stupidity. His hand closed around the back of her wheelchair. He forced the chair away from the bed. You are coming with me. No. The gun touched her shoulder. This time, Ava, you will do exactly what I say. Ethan took her through the service tunnel and placed her inside a vehicle. He drove toward an abandoned church near the river. The building had belonged to the Salvatore family decades earlier. Ethan believed Nico would understand the message. Inside the church, broken stained glass covered the floor. Candles burned along the aisle. Victor Vale waited near the altar with two armed men. His hands were tied. Ethan pushed Ava's wheelchair into the center aisle. Victor stared at him. You have lost your mind. Ethan laughed. You told me to remove every witness. You were supposed to kill Salvatore. Instead, you destroyed your own life. Ava looked between them. The truth became clear. Ethan had not been a powerful partner. He had always been disposable. Victor had used his ambition, then blamed him when the assassination failed. Ethan pointed the gun at Victor. You promised me control of the Eastern accounts. I promised whatever was necessary to make you useful. Ethan's face twisted. Ava spoke before he could fire. He never respected you. Ethan turned toward her. Be quiet. You destroyed our marriage for a man who saw you as a servant. I said, be quiet. You blame my wheelchair because facing the truth would have meant admitting what you became. Ethan crossed the aisle and struck the side of her chair with his hand. I became powerful. No. Ava looked directly into his eyes. You became frightened. The church doors opened. Nico stood beneath the ruined archway. Rain moved behind him. Blood marked one side of his face. His black shirt was torn near the shoulder. 4 of Ethan's men lay outside on the steps. Nico entered alone. Ethan moved behind Ava and pressed the gun against her temple. Stop. Nico stopped. His eyes found Ava's. The rage in his face disappeared beneath complete focus. Are you hurt? Ava shook her head. Ethan pushed the gun harder against her. Drop your weapon. Nico placed his gun on the floor. Kick it away. He obeyed. Victor looked toward Nico. Salvatore, we can settle this. Nico did not acknowledge him. His entire world had narrowed to Ava. Ethan laughed. The great Nico Salvatore brought to his knees by a woman who cannot even stand. Nico lowered himself onto one knee. Ava's chest tightened. He did not look ashamed. He looked deadly. Ethan continued, tell your men to leave the property. Nico touched the communication device at his collar. Withdraw to the outer gate. A voice answered, Nico. Do it. The church became silent. Ethan's breathing grew faster. He had expected fear to feel like victory. Instead, Nico's obedience frightened him. Nico looked at Ava. I am going to bring you home. Ethan pressed the gun against her. You are not bringing anyone home. Ava watched Nico's eyes. He glanced once toward the broken, stained glass beside the aisle, then toward the small metal cross resting beneath Ava's chair. Ava understood. She lowered one hand, slowly. Ethan did not notice. His attention remained on Nico. Ava closed her fingers around the metal cross. Nico spoke. "You should have killed me on the bridge." Ethan's face tightened. "I tried." "No. You allowed fear to control your hand." Nico rose slightly. "Just as it controls you now." Ethan aimed the gun toward him. Ava swung the metal cross backward. It struck Ethan's injured wrist. The gun fired into the ceiling. Nico moved. He crossed the distance before Ethan could recover. Nico seized Ethan's arm and twisted the weapon away. Ethan struck Nico's wounded side. Nico staggered. Ava locked both hands around one wheel and turned her chair hard. The metal footrest struck Ethan behind the knee. He fell. Nico drove him against the floor and wrapped one hand around his throat. Ethan clawed at Nico's wrist. Nico lifted the gun. Ava saw murder enter his face. "Nico." He did not move. Ava rolled closer. "You promised you would choose the woman I am." Nico looked at her. Ethan coughed beneath him. Ava held Nico's gaze. "Do not let him decide who you become." Nico's finger remained against the trigger. The church doors opened again. His men entered. Police sirens sounded beyond the property. Celeste had sent the recovered recordings to federal investigators and several news organizations before the meeting at the museum. The evidence could no longer disappear. Nico slowly lowered the weapon. He released Ethan. Ethan reached toward a second gun hidden near his ankle. Victor shouted a warning. Ethan raised the weapon toward Ava. Nico fired. The bullet struck Ethan in the chest. He fell beside the broken altar. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nico crossed the aisle and took Ava's face between his hands. He searched her for injuries. Ava touched the blood near his temple. "I am all right." Nico closed his eyes. His forehead rested against hers. "I almost lost you." "No." She held his face. "You found me." The final choice. Ethan survived long enough to face trial. The bullet damaged one lung but missed his heart. Federal investigators arrested Victor Vale and 12 officials connected to his organization. Celeste entered protective custody after providing evidence against her father. The recordings proved that Ethan had caused the bridge crash and accepted instructions to eliminate every witness. Ava gave her testimony from the same courtroom where Ethan had once planned to portray her as confused and unstable. She wore the blue dress from the wedding. Nico sat behind her. He did not speak during her testimony. He did not need to. Ava told the court about the rain, the gun, the fire, and the husband who left her trapped inside the vehicle. She did not cry until she described the stranger who returned for her. When she finished, Ethan refused to look at her. For the first time, Ava understood that his refusal no longer mattered. She had survived without his regret. Months passed. Ava returned to teaching full-time. Nico funded the reconstruction of the school library. But Ava made him agree that his name would not appear on the building. He complained. She won. The new library included wide aisles, lowered shelves, accessible reading tables, and a ramp leading into a garden. Sophie suggested naming it the Salvatore Room. Ava chose the Bridge Room instead. Nico pretended not to understand why. His criminal empire did not disappear. Neither did the danger surrounding him. However, he began changing how he ruled it. Marco's brother was rescued. Marco remained alive and spent every day working to repair the damage his betrayal had caused. Nico stopped confusing mercy with weakness. He also stopped placing protection around Ava without her knowledge. Most of the time. One winter evening, Ava found 2 men outside her apartment instead of one. She called Nico. We agreed on one. There was a threat near the school. One. Ava. One. A long silence followed. The second man left 5 minutes later. Ava smiled at the window. Her rehabilitation continued. Some days brought progress. Other days brought pain. She learned to stand briefly with support, but walking remained uncertain. Nico never asked when she would recover. He never looked at the wheelchair as though it was an enemy. He only asked what she needed. That change mattered more than any promise. 1 year after Ethan's failed wedding, Ava returned to St. Aurelia Chapel. The building had been restored after the attack. A permanent stone ramp now curved beside the front steps. Ava reached the entrance in her wheelchair without assistance. Nico waited inside. There were no wedding guests, no musicians, no white flowers, only afternoon sunlight moving across the repaired stained glass. Ava rolled down the center aisle. Nico wore a black suit. He looked as dangerous as the day he had carried her through the doors. He also looked nervous. Ava stopped in front of him. "You asked me to come here?" Nico reached into his coat. He removed a small velvet box. Ava stared at it. Nico lowered himself onto one knee. The feared Mafia Boss, who had once controlled entire rooms with a glance, now looked at her as though his future depended on her answer. "I brought you into this church because another man wanted you to feel broken." He opened the box. A simple diamond ring rested inside. "I brought you back because this is where I understood that carrying you would never be enough." Ava's eyes filled with tears. Nico continued, "I do not want you to need me." His voice became rough. "I want you to choose me when you do not." Ava touched his face. Nico closed his eyes against her palm. "I cannot promise you a peaceful life," he said. "I cannot promise I will never frighten you. I cannot promise I will stop wanting to destroy every person who causes you pain." Ava gave a tearful smile. "That final promise would be difficult for you." "Impossible." He opened his eyes. "But I promise I will never mistake protecting you for owning you. I will never make a decision about your body or your future without you. I will stand beside you when you want strength, and I will step back when you need freedom." Ava looked at the man before her. He was not gentle because love had erased his darkness. He was gentle with her because loving her had taught him to control it. She held out her hand. "Yes." Nico released a breath that sounded almost broken. He placed the ring on her finger. Then he kissed her hand. Ava looked toward the chapel entrance. "Do you remember the first time you carried me through those doors? Every second, you looked as though you wanted to kill everyone inside. I wanted to kill several of them." She laughed. Nico rose. Ava opened her arms. "Carry me again." His expression softened. "Are you certain I am not asking because I cannot enter on my own?" "I know. I am asking because this time, I choose who carries me." Nico lifted her from the wheelchair. Ava placed both arms around his neck. He carried her toward the open chapel doors. Outside, the winter sun shone across the city. Her wheelchair followed beside them, pushed by nobody. Nico had attached a small motor to it as a surprise. Despite Ava repeatedly warning him not to modify her equipment without permission, she looked over his shoulder. "Did you change my chair?" His jaw tightened. "Only slightly." "Nico, it has a remote control. You promised." "I promised to discuss decisions about your future. I did not specifically mention chair improvements." Ava tried to look angry. She failed. Nico smiled against her hair. It was a real smile this time. Not the small expression he had once offered a demanding child in a school hallway. It transformed his entire face. Ava rested her head against his shoulder. 1 year earlier, another man had carried her into that church to prove she belonged to him. Nico carried her out because she had chosen to belong beside him. The black vehicles waited at the bottom of the hill. His men stood near them, pretending not to watch. Nico stopped at the top of the stone ramp. Ava looked toward the life waiting below. There would still be danger. There would be difficult nights, guarded doors, and battles between Nico's need to protect and Ava's need to remain free. There would be scars neither of them could remove. But Ava no longer believed love was proven by sacrifice alone. Love was proven by the person who remained when staying became difficult. The person who saw strength where others saw damage. The person who could carry her without making her feel small. Nico tightened his arms around her. Ready, Ava looked into the dark eyes of the man she had once saved from a burning car. For the first time since the crash, the future did not feel like something that had been taken from her. It felt open. It felt dangerous. It felt entirely her own. Take me home. Nico carried her down the ramp as the chapel doors slowly closed behind them. This time, Ava never looked back.